Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to be looking at its logarithmic regression trend lines. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Sound the Premium list where you can get access to these indicators as well, and also a website with a ton of charts, on-chain, social charts, derivative charts, ROI, logarithmic regression, etc. Check it out intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go and jump in. So I like to talk about the logarithmic regression charts for Bitcoin occasionally and just generally discuss where they are, what are the ranges on them, and what can we expect. One of the interesting things that I've been following for a while is waiting for the upper part of the lower regression band to reach 30K. And you can see that now it is at $30,037.30. The interesting thing about that is that the upper part of the lower regression line is now at the summer low, right? It's at the summer low. This is like the idea of, in general, that the time is on our side with Bitcoin, that the longer, the more time that passes us by, that, we should see Bitcoin generally trend higher. Now, that's not to say we can't go back down into this area over here. Again, the fair value of fit to non-bubble data is closer to $20,000, but still, it does show that in general, these regression lines were slowly but steadily moving higher, and then the fair value of Bitcoin is also moving higher as well, and that's actually better reflected with the fair value regression trend line, which looks something like that. And in this one, we spin various phases of undervaluation and overvaluation. So sometimes we're undervalued for a while, overvalued, undervalued, overvalued, and then a second stint of being overvalued here, undervalued for a while, again overvalued, and then undervalued for quite a while, and then overvalued. And we're right now we're sort of at the fair valuation territory, because the fair value of Bitcoin fit to all data is currently at around 34,766. So we're only about $4,000 higher than the fair valuation of Bitcoin based on the fair value logarithmic regression trend line. So with that in mind, I mean, it is 38,856. Is it a decent long-term price for Bitcoin? Probably. In the short term, it's really anyone's guess, right? I mean, could go up, could go down. I have no idea what's going to happen next week. There's just so many factors that are impossible to anticipate. But I did think it was at least interesting to look at the main logarithmic regression bands and see that, in fact, the upper part of the lower regression band has now hit $30,000. So we've more or less hit the range low back in the summer. What I also find interesting is during the major mania phase of late 2020 and early 2021, we did briefly go in to the regression band, but just very briefly. Okay. So one could make the argument that since and a lot of people have asked me this, and there's some validity to it, the question goes along something like, well, since we didn't see a major spike up to the top like we did over here, and like we did back in 2013, do we have to go all the way back to the bottom? Well, there's no guarantees with anything in this life, right? Except death and taxes, as we've said before. There's no guarantees with anything. But yeah, it's certainly a possibility that if we do end up coming down, then perhaps this would be some type of area where you would get some accumulation, and then we continue along the way. And then maybe everyone who's waiting for it to come down here, they end up waiting a really long time. And perhaps it doesn't actually happen. I would recommend that during these times you just come up with a strategy and stick to it. Remember, bear markets are where the real money is made. If you can just come up with a strategy, I know it's cliche to just say DCA, right? If you can come up with a strategy and just stick to it for a couple years, I think your future self will be very happy with your current self for coming up with the strategy and just sticking to it. If you change your strategy on a daily basis based on the most recent 4-hour candle, that's a great way to lose your money. So try to come up with a strategy and stick to it. If you're curious where the upper regression band is right now, it currently ranges from around 86.6K up to 128.2K. What's interesting is during April, we were looking at this and saying, well, the regression band doesn't really allow for $100,000 Bitcoin right now. It does allow for it now, because now that we're in 2022, you can see that it technically allows for a $128,000 Bitcoin, and these are only just going to continue to go up. So if you imagine sort of stretching these out, and they're gonna roll over a little bit because they're regression trend lines, but eventually you can kind of see that basically it's like the FOMO price of today is the fear price of tomorrow is generally a good way to think about it. But you can generally see how the regression bands will sort of slowly increase with time, and will probably continue to bounce around between them, between the lower one and the upper one. And the general idea is that the closer we are to the lower one, the more you want to buy. And the general idea is the closer we are to the upper one, the more you want to sell. That's, in a nutshell, the main idea of the logarithmic regression bands. And what's interesting is that you don't necessarily need to wait any predetermined amount of time to see us go to the top. For instance, the visit to the top over here in 2011, it only took about 2 years for us to get back up to it. This one here, from this peak to this one, took about 4 years. But then the most recent one, from hitting the regression band to actually getting back to it, took closer to about 3 years. So there's really no telling how long it's going to take. You can see that, over here it took 2 years, here it took 4 years, and then here it took 3 years, or just over 3 years. And so the question is how long is it going to take? I don't think it's going to take 4 more years for us to get back up to the top of the regression band. But we'll take it one day at a time and see what happens. So the general idea is the closer you are to the bottom, you want to buy. The closer you are to the top, you want to take profits. It doesn't really necessarily need to be any more complicated than that. Hopefully you guys like the content. If you do, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Check out the premium list sale, intothecryptoverse.com. Lock in the lower rate as long as you do not cancel, and I will see you next time. Bye.